Welcome to Table Bible Studies with Den and Ben. New studies are posted every Thursday. We're studying the life of Abraham, and Dennis and Benedicta are discussing God's warning to a pagan king named Abimelech, who has taken Sarah into his home because Abraham passed her off as his sister, but not his wife.
So Abimelech, of course, even in the dream, he recalls, I haven't fooled around with her. I haven't brought her into my bedroom. You know, we've been kept apart.
Yeah.
So he says, Lord, would you slay a righteous nation also? Did he not say to me, she's my sister? And even she herself said, he's my brother. So they're both lying here, or not telling the whole story.
Yeah.
In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands, I've done this. Keep in mind, the fault is not that Abimelech has multiple wives. That was allowed. God wouldn't have said anything about that. Everybody did it, all the wealthy people, and certainly the kings. The problem was you've got somebody that is another man's wife, and you have no business to her.
Yeah.
God says you're a dead man. So God continues this conversation. Interesting, you're having a conversation with God. It's not real pleasant.
Yeah, I was like, some people will be like, God doesn't speak.
Yeah.
God doesn't say a thing. God is not dumb or deaf and dumb. He hears and he speaks. And now he's not even speaking to a believer. This
Right.
man,
Idol worshiper.
idol worshiper. So
Yeah.
he's not even speaking to a believer here. So he speaks to unbelievers too
Yeah.
by warning them so bad
Well,
and
he
instruction.
speaks to and he speaks through unbelievers at times, or he may even choose a donkey. So God is
Right.
unlimited in terms of how he wants to communicate. It's great to think of somebody who loves God, prays and fasts all the time, and they get a word from God, and that
Right.
does happen.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can be someone who never prays or fasts and doesn't know God at all. So God continues his conversation. He says, yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart. For I also withheld you from sinning against me. Kind of gives you the idea that he went longer in this period of abstinence from Sarah than he normally would have. So God says, I kept you back from this. And I know your heart is right in this. Therefore, he says, verse 7, restore the man's wife. Give her back. For he is a prophet, and he'll pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours.
Oh
Wow,
my
that's a pretty
God.
serious threat, isn't it?
Yeah, very serious. And you don't, when God is speaking like this, he surely meant it. And, God doesn't joke with so many things.
Right.
And by the time he saw that this was going on, he came into the mix and be like, I gotta correct this before things went wrong.
Yeah.
Before things goes wrong, I gotta, I have to come down and do. I think even when Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, God came in. God came in between the whole thing going on. And I was like, had it been that they begged, for forgiveness, we wouldn't have been in this mess. We'll be suffering all along.
I don't know.
God would have forgiven them and make things right.
Well,
with them
in
right
a way,
there.
he did sort of forgive them. I mean, he made clothes for them when they were naked,
Yeah,
and he
but not
continued
to
to
drive them
relate to them.
out.
But the sin had happened, and mankind was permanently placed under sin. Now, I want to call to attention a couple of points in this verse 7. God tells Abimelech, restore the man's wife.
Right.
And then he calls Abraham a
prophet.
He said he is a prophet. Now, this is the first time the word prophet is used in the Bible. He is a prophet. Now, when you think about prophets, you think about Isaiah, you think about Daniel, Ezekiel, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
They preached to Israel that you're sinning, you need to repent, and they acted kind of weird at times, and they were very harsh and tough. Abraham's just kind of a mild guy that goes around, tells a few lies here and there, and he's not really preaching righteousness to anybody. He doesn't exactly seem like a prophet, but
he does to me.
Okay.
Because prophets, what do? They hear from God.
Well,
come and they relate to people or communicate with the people. And this guy constantly, reading through his story, he's been hearing from God. So what else are you? Is it not to tag the name there, prophet?
Yeah. Well, you just stole my thunder, because that's exactly what I was going to say. He heard from God. To me, the number one qualification of a prophet, a lot of times we think about them blasting out rebukes against Israel, and being very eloquent and, criticizing Israel, slamming Israel. But to me, it's not so much their words that makes them a prophet, it's their hearing.
Yes.
They hear from God. They've got such good hearing. You know, some people hear better than others, and as you get older, you don't hear so well. Sometimes you need a hearing aid. But prophets had such good hearing. They didn't just hear people's voices, they heard God's voices from time to time. Right. Not always, not every day, but from time to time. Yeah. And so Abraham was a prophet in that sense. Not that he was going around rebuking people for their sins and all that, but he was hearing from God and apparently communicating some of the things to his household at least. You know, Sarah, you won't believe what God told me now. Yes. And so forth. So God says he's a prophet, meaning he's not just my boy, he's not just my servant. Yes. He's a special servant that hears from me, and you have no business with this man's wife anyway. So
and another thing I'm saying here is, what followed the prophet thing.
Yeah.
He said, for he is a prophet.
Right.
And he went along and said, and he will pray for you and you shall live. So he has the power to pray on somebody and the person leaves.
Yeah, and as an intercessor.
Intercessor.
I believe prophets tend to be intercessors. They don't just rebuke Israel or the people that they're preaching to, but they also pray for them.
Yeah.
And so and their prayers are effectual. Their prayers are effective. They accomplish things. So he says he needs to pray for. Now, if I was Abimelech, I'd be kind of thinking, him pray for me. He's the one that lied to me. I shouldn't need his prayers. If anything, he ought to need my prayers.
Yeah.
He's the liar. Do you not know? You call him a prophet. I call him a liar. But his lies did not disqualify him as a prophet. He was still a prophet. He was still God's servant. Yes. And he was a servant that made a mistake, but he was still a servant.
I was like thinking today, somebody would be like, okay, you have one office and stick to that office. You got no other office. And, God called this man out of his city and then started speaking to him, and then along the way, we know what happened up to this 20 that we are reading now.
Right.
And, constantly speaking to him and making it known that he's God. And now it's like, okay, he's a prophet, and then he's a prayer, mighty, maybe not a prayer, like he can pray for you too, not just a prophet who prophesies and go away,
right.
And he, to go and hear more from God. He can pray for you and you will live. And I was like, okay, God can restore somebody's life who has sinned or who have done wrong through prayers. And I'm like, okay, today, is it possible for somebody to have more than one office? Like you're a pastor, you are also a prophet?
Well, yeah, I think so. And certainly we can have multiple gifts in our life. But generally, one gift will have preeminence over all the others, so that's the one you want to focus on because that's where you do the most good.
Right.
But you may have several gifts, and sometimes you may have a gift that God doesn't even want you to use. Now, why he would give you that gift in the first place, I don't know. But there are some cases where you're saying, well, Lord, I could do this. And God's like, yeah, you could, but that's not what I'm wanting you to do, at least for right now. So, but we're getting away from Abraham, so let's get back to him.
Let's go back.
So God tells him he's going to pray for you. So he gets up, Abimelech does, the king, you might call him a mayor king. He was more of a king of a city than he was of an entire nation. He calls his servants and he tells them, it says all things in their hearing, and they got very much afraid. So he says, hey guys, you won't believe what I just dreamed and who I saw in my dream. It was God, Abraham's God. He told me we're all going to die if we don't give his wife back to Abraham, and he needs to pray for me and for all of us. And so everybody gets scared.
God is using this means to also introduce himself to these people, who are serving idols.
Right.
And it's like letting them know that there is another higher God that you don't even, bow to or respect or worship. So I am the person. So I am speaking to you now. I got the power to deal with you. Touch my girl. You are a dead person.
You really like that, the idea he
I love
protected
that.
his daughter.
I love that.
Yeah.
Touch my daughter, you're a dead person. I love that God is looking out for his girls, knowing that, when it comes to fight, men will wrestle with us and, we'll be like, can't fight back too much. But I thank God for, some of us that can box. I should start learning how to do that,
Right.
boxing.
So anyway, Abimelech, we could go a long ways with this, but let's just cool it and move on.
Okay.
Abimelech calls Abraham to him. So he's got to tell him what's going on and what God just showed him. He says,
Yeah.
"Why? What have you done to us?" In other words, why'd you do this? He says, "How have I offended you that you brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? You've done deeds to me that ought not to be done." Now, Abraham, the man of God, the prophet, is being rebuked by an idolater. An idol-worshiping, godless king is rebuking Abraham, and he's right and Abraham's wrong. He's like, you shouldn't have done this. This ought not to have been done.
Yeah.
You wonder what Abraham is thinking and maybe remembering what went on in Egypt.
Yeah.
He said, verse 10, "What did you have in view that you've done this thing? What was the point of it?" And, he doesn't understand it. Why would you lie? Why would you not say she's your wife? I wouldn't have taken her and you could be doing just fine.
I think Father Abraham was protecting his anointing, his calling, his mission, his ministry, his,
No, I don't believe that for a second. I think Abraham was
He
scared and
wasn't
covering his
lying.
own
He wasn't
rear.
lying. Sarah was kind of a relative.
All right, you're wanting to defend Abraham. I don't have any respect for this incident. Now, I have tremendous respect for Abraham, but not for what he did here.
Thanks for watching our study of the greatest book ever written, the Bible. In addition to these Bible studies with Ben and me, I also share what I call video devos, which are short teachings I give on various Bible topics. These teachings are normally, but not always, posted on Mondays. Be sure and click the subscribe button and then click that bell icon and choose Show All Notifications. That way you'll be notified every time we post a new video. And if you're struggling with diabetes, check out my other channel, which is called Beat Diabetes. God bless you, and see you again soon.